In this video of Anatomy with Amy, we're going to talk about the muscles in the anterior compartment of the forearm, and more specifically, the superficial layer. Check out my other videos to see some of the deeper layers of the anterior forearm. So when we talk about the superficial layer, there's 4 muscles in this superficial layer. And if you take your hand, so I've got my one arm here, my right arm, I'm going to take my left arm, I'm going to make the number 4, and I'm going to lay my fingers at the medial epicondyle. So that's a sticky outy bony bit on that medial aspect of the forearm. And if I lay my fingers across my forearm like that, can you see? If I go this way, this is approximately the orientation of the 4 muscles that are in that superficial layer on the anterior compartment. So we're going to look at them in order. The first one we're going to talk about is where your index finger is. And this index finger is going to be where Pronator Teres lies. So write that one down for you. So with the muscles that are on the anterior forearm, a lot of the forearm flexors, there is a common attachment point at the medial epicondyle of the humerus. Not all of the muscles attach there, but it is a common attachment point and quite a few of them attach there, including Pronator Teres. So Pronator Teres is going to originate at that medial epicondyle, and then it's going to come across the front of the forearm, and it's got attachment onto the lateral aspect of the radius and probably around the middle third. So if I try to find it here on my model, I've got to remove brachioradialis, okay, because its attachment is going to be deep to that. So you can see it here. So if this is our medial epicondyle, it's going to come across the front of the forearm, and then it's got attachment onto that radius. So if I am trailing to and palpating that, I'm going to make my way to that medial epicondyle. To activate Pronator Teres, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my patient shake my hand. So you're going to come into that handshake position. And what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to turn the palm of their hand towards the ground. And you as a therapist are going to provide some resistance. So you're not going to allow them to turn their palm to face the ground. You're going to provide some resistance. And then you can activate Pronator Teres. So when you are cross fiber palpating that particular muscle, you can go from that proximal attachment point. You can cross fiber across the anterior aspect of the arm, and you're going to want to land on that lateral aspect of the radius. Do your best to follow along with that contracting or palpating muscle as the patient is trying to activate by turning their palm down or performing pronation. So that's Pronator Teres. The next 3 are part of the wrist flexor group, and so I will put them out here. So our first one is Flexor Carpi Radialis. Okay, what I like about this muscle is it's telling us a lot about what it does based on its name. So it is going to flex. Carpi makes reference to the carpal bones. So it has attachment just past the wrist. So it is going to be a wrist flexor. And then it's going to land somewhere on that radial side. So more laterally for an anatomical by that radial side. And it's also going to perform some radial deviation. So when we take our 4 fingers and lay them across, okay, we've got our middle finger is then going to show us approximately where Flexor Carpi Radialis will travel. You can also do, if you can make like a claw hand and you create some wrist flexion, what you may be able to see, let's see if I can get close enough so you can see these here. So if you've been a massage therapist or anyone that does a lot of manual work, you might have some really fantastic tendons. So this here is the Flexor Carpi Radialis tendon. And so when we cross fiber that, we can start at the medial epicondyle. It does have attachment onto the medial epicondyle. It's going to travel down the anterior forearm And then you can pick up that tendon of Flexor Carpi Radialis, and it has attachment onto the base of the second and third metacarpal. So remember, those metacarpals live in the palm of the hand. They're just past that distal row of carpal bones, and then the base of the second and third metacarpal are going to be where that attachment point is for Flexor Carpi Radialis. So the action of this particular muscle is it's going to flex the carpal bones, so it's going to perform some wrist flexion. And then if we're in anatomical, it will do some radial deviation, or sometimes also referred to as abduction at the wrist joint. So radial deviation or abduction. The next one in our anterior compartment superficial layer is Palmaris longus. A fun fact about this one is that evolutionarily speaking, this muscle is actually being weeded out a little bit. So not everyone will have this particular tendon. I like to say I'm not as evolved as some of my students. And so I still have that tendon. So if we look back to where we were, this is the Flexor Carpi Radialis tendon. And then beside it here, we've got Palmaris longus tendon. I'm pointing to the right one for you. So it comes along here and has attachment onto that palmar fascia and a bit of the flexor retinaculum. So if we go back to our superficial layer, my index finger was Pronator Teres, my middle finger was Flexor Carpi Radialis, and then my ring finger is going to be Palmaris longus. This also originates at that medial epicondyle of the humerus. It comes down the anterior forearm, and then as it comes towards the palm of the hand, we can pick up that tendon, and it has attachment onto a portion of the flexor retinaculum, which, as you may be aware, is the roof of the carpal tunnel, and then it has attachment into the palmar fascia, the palmar aponeurosis. So part of the function of this muscle is it tenses the fascia, the palmar fascia, and we can see a portion of what that does with the fascia in the hand. So if you try to pick up skin on the back of your hand, okay, everyone's got different amounts of stretch in their fascia, but the palm of the hand, or dorsal aspect of the hand, excuse me, picks up rather easily. If you try to pick up the skin on the palm of your hand, it's not going to pick up quite as easily. And part of that reason is that as we manipulate and twist and move things with our hands, this prevents shearing and tearing of the skin as we manipulate things with our hand. So Palmaris longus comes down and has attachment into that palmar aponeurosis. Our fourth and final muscle in the anterior compartment, superficial layer, is Flexor Carpi Ulnaris. Ulnaris. There it is. Okay, Flexor Carpi Ulnaris. So if we go back to that original 4 fingers on the forearm, we had Pronator Teres, Flexor Carpi Radialis, Palmaris longus, that's the ring finger, and then the pinky is going to line up approximately with that Flexor Carpi Ulnaris. If we go back to that claw hand, so the 2 tendons of Flexor Carpi Radialis and Palmaris longus are quite close together. Flexor Carpi Ulnaris is out to the side a bit more medial, and it's in line with closer to the 5th digit. So this does not have attachment onto the medial epicondyle. It originates a little bit lower on that posterior ulna. And when we cross fiber palpate, we can palpate down the forearm. So inferiorly along the forearm, we can pick up that tendon of Flexor Carpi Ulnaris, and it has attachment onto pisiform, hook of hamate, and the base of the 5th metacarpal. So pisiform is fairly easy to palpate. It would be the heel of the hand. So if we look from a medial perspective, that medial heel of the hand is going to be pisiform. A little bit more distal into the hypothenar eminence, we can pick up the hook of hamate, and then the base of the 5th metacarpal is going to be in and around that same region as well. So those are the, well, let's talk about its action first. So it is also going to flex the carpal bones. So it does some wrist flexion, and it also does some ulnar deviation. So if we're in that anatomical position, it will do ADD, adduction to the body, or ulnar deviation. So those are its actions. So these are the 4 muscles that live in the anterior compartment of the forearm. A little trick that I heard a long time ago when I was in school. Okay, in this particular reference, it seems to be losing, it's, what's the word I'm looking for? Most people don't know what it is anymore, but the FM radio, so the flexors, so everything that lives on the anterior compartment, flexors, medial, FM, medial. A lot of your forearm flexors are going to originate on that medial epicondyle. And then in another video, we'll talk about the forearm extensors, and a common attachment point for those forearm extensors are going to be the lateral epicondyle. So this is your anterior compartment, superficial layer, the first 4 muscles. Check out another video to learn about the deeper layers of the anterior compartment of the forearm. Hopefully this was helpful for you today, and see you in the next video.